10 hours. April 18, 1988. In 10 hours, the U.S. Navy destroyed half of Iran's operational surface fleet. It was the largest American naval surface battle since World War II. Two Iranian oil platforms, used as military command posts, lay shattered. One Iranian frigate sank. Another burned and drifted. 3 speedboats went to the bottom. Dozens of ERG sailors died. The United States lost 1 helicopter and 2 crewmen, not to enemy fire, but to a mechanical failure. The clash was called Operation Praying Mantis. Then it vanished from memory. Before that single day in April 1988, the Persian Gulf had already been burning for years. What began as a land war between Iran and Iraq in 1980 quickly spilled onto the water. By 1984, both sides began attacking oil tankers in the Gulf, seeking to cripple the other's economy. Iraq targeted Iranian tankers and loading terminals, while Iran struck vessels carrying Iraqi or what it deemed pro-Iraqi Arab oil. This was the tanker war, a brutal extension of a conflict that had already killed hundreds of thousands on land. By 1987, the danger escalated sharply. Iran, facing heavier losses, turned to mining the narrow sea lanes and firing on neutral shipping. Dozens of commercial vessels from nations like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the United States came under attack. Kuwait's fleet, in particular, was being bled dry, and the emirate pleaded for international help. The Soviet Union offered to escort Kuwaiti ships, but the United States could not allow Moscow to expand its naval presence in the region. In response, Washington launched Operation Earnest Will, the largest naval convoy operation since World War II. 11 Kuwaiti oil tankers were reflagged as American ships, their crews protected by U.S. Navy warships and aircraft. From July 1987 onward, these convoys ran a gauntlet through the Gulf, dodging mines, silkworm missiles, and speedboat swarms. But the presence of the constant military presence, turned the Gulf into a volatile tinderbox. Iranian attacks didn't stop. Mines kept appearing. The Persian Gulf was becoming a powder keg. The morning of April 14, 1988, brought that confrontation. The frigate USS Samuel B was escorting tankers through the central Gulf when it entered a known danger area. The crew had been on high alert, scanning for mines for hours, but this one was not floating on the surface. It was a submerged M08 contact mine, laid by the Iranian vessel Iran Ajr just days earlier, estimated at a depth of roughly 15 feet. At 10 a.m., a massive explosion ripped through the hull. A 15-foot gash tore open the port side, just below the waterline. Fire erupted instantly. 10 sailors were wounded, many with severe burns. The blast knocked out main propulsion and severed electrical cables. The engine room began flooding rapidly. Within minutes, the sea poured into the ship, threatening to capsize it. The crew fought back with extraordinary speed. Damage control teams shored up bulkheads and activated portable pumps. The cracked keel, however, was still partly intact. The ship's commanding officer reported the situation as critical. For nearly 5 hours, sailors battled smoke, gas, and rising water. Engineers welded steel patches over the hole while the fire raged. Through sheer grit, they managed to prevent the Roberts from sinking. A salvage tug towed the crippled frigate out of the minefield. The ship survived, but the cost was clear. Iran's mining campaign had now directly struck a U.S. warship. Washington immediately labeled the attack an act of war. The attack on the USS Samuel B. was a red line. In Washington, President Ronald Reagan and his national security team convened urgently. There would be no drawn-out deliberation. The decision was swift and unequivocal, a proportional but decisive military response. The objective was clear: to cripple Iran's ability to threaten international shipping and make it clear that attacks on U.S. forces would be met with overwhelming force. The operation was codenamed Praying Mantis. Planning moved at a breakneck pace. Within roughly 48 hours, a complex battle plan was approved. It called for a simultaneous, multi-pronged assault to overwhelm Iranian defenses. The primary targets were 2 Iranian oil platforms in the Persian Gulf, known as Sassan and Sirri. U.S. intelligence had confirmed they were not civilian facilities, but forward military command and surveillance posts used to coordinate attacks on merchant vessels. But the operation's scope was broader. U.S. commanders anticipated, and even counted on, the Iranian Navy's reaction. The plan was designed to provoke that reaction, drawing Iranian warships out into open water where America's superior technology and firepower could decisively engage them. This would not be a mere strike on fixed installations. It was a deliberate trap to destroy Iran's naval capability in a single, punishing day. To execute this trap, the U.S. Navy assembled 3 distinct surface action groups. Each was given a specific role and its own set of targets, transforming the central Gulf into a coordinated battle space. Surface Action Group Bravo was the heavy hitter. It included the guided missile cruiser USS Wainwright and 2 frigates, the USS Bagley and USS Simpson. Their primary target was the Sassan oil platform. This structure was not a simple wellhead. Intelligence indicated it was a fortified command post with military communications gear and radar. The group was also ordered to neutralize any Iranian aircraft that dared to intervene. Surface Action Group Charlie formed the second pincer. It was built around the guided missile cruiser USS Joseph Strauss and the frigate US O'Brien. Their objective was the Sirri oil platform, a critical hub for IRG's fast attack craft located far to the east, closer to the Strait of Hormuz. Surface Action Group Delta was the reserve force, positioned to block any Iranian warships attempting to flee or reinforce. It was composed of the destroyer USS Lynn McCormick and the amphibious transport dock USS Trenton, which served as a mobile operating base for Marine Corps helicopters and SEALs. Overhead, the carrier USS Enterprise and her air wing provided a steel umbrella. A-6 intruders and F-14 Tomcats were ready to deliver precision strikes and establish air superiority. The groups moved into position before dawn on April 18th, a naval vice tightening around Iran's mid-Gulf forces. The bait was set. With the Sirri platform neutralized, Surface Action Group Bravo turned its attention to the second target, the Sassan oil platform. This structure, located roughly 90 miles to the northwest, served as a critical Iranian command and control node. The rules of engagement remained clear. At 8 a.m., the destroyer USS Joseph Strauss and the frigate US O'Brien moved into position. A U.S. Navy SH-60B Seahawk helicopter hovered close, its crew broadcasting a final warning. They ordered the Iranian personnel to abandon the platform immediately. No one emerged. After a suitable pause, the order to fire was given. The Strauss opened the assault, its 5-inch naval gun thundering across the water. High explosive shells slammed into the platform's legs and superstructure. The O'Brien joined the barrage moments later. The coordinated fire was precise and devastating. Chunks of metal twisted and flew. Thick black smoke began to billow from the crippled installation. Within roughly 30 minutes, the Sassan platform was a burning wreck. Its military function was completely eliminated. The surface group then ceased fire, allowing time for any survivors to escape the flames. The destruction of Sassan was clinical. It severed another key link in Iran's Persian Gulf surveillance network. With both platforms gone, Iran's ability to coordinate attacks on commercial shipping from these fixed positions was shattered. The U.S. task force had successfully executed the first phase of its plan, clearing the board of 2 strategic outposts. Now, the Iranian Navy, having seen its assets attacked, began to move. The Americans had their attention, and the next, more volatile phase of the battle was about to begin. Even as the Iranian fleet stirred, another blow was already falling. 200 miles southeast, Surface Action Group Charlie closed on the Sirri oil platform. It was a key surveillance and communications hub, watching the shipping lanes and directing IRG's attacks. At 1:30 in the afternoon, the American warships gave the crew 5 minutes to leave. Dozens of Iranians scrambled into a tugboat and fled. Then the destroyer USS Merrill and the amphibious transport dock USS Trenton opened fire with their 5-inch guns. Explosive shells tore through the steel lattice and concrete decks. Fuel stores ignited, sending columns of oily black smoke towering into the sky. The platform's radar domes and antenna arrays crumpled. After the naval gunfire had crippled the structure, a demolition team from SEAL Team 5 boarded the wreck. They placed satchel charges deep inside the mangled compartments and detonated them. The blasts ripped the platform apart from within. Within 40 minutes, Sirri was a blazing skeleton, its legs twisted and its decks collapsed into the sea. Every communication line, every radar feed it relayed to Tehran, went silent. Iran's eyes over the southern Gulf were gouged out. The U.S. had methodically dismantled one of the two command posts, and now the full weight of the operation turned toward the approaching Iranian warships. The Iranian missile boat Sassan raced forward, ignoring repeated radio warnings to alter course. Her crew had a single mission: close the distance and strike. Suddenly, a harpoon missile erupted from the Sassan's deck and screamed toward the USS Wainwright. The Wainwright's radar locked on instantly. In a heartbeat, the ship's chaff launchers fired clouds of aluminum dipoles, decoying the incoming threat. The harpoon lost its track and plunged harmlessly into the sea. The American response was immediate and overwhelming. From the Wainwright and the USS Simpson, Standard missiles leaped off their rails, streaking low across the water. The first hit tore into the Sassan's superstructure, shredding metal and igniting fires. More missiles followed, each impact hammering the small warship. She staggered but still floated, her crew fighting to keep her alive. Then the Surface Action Group closed to gun range. 5-inch shells from the Wainwright and the USS Bagley smashed into the burning vessel, methodically ripping apart her hull. The Sassan listed sharply, her decks awash in flame and black smoke. Within minutes, she capsized and slipped beneath the surface. Roughly 30 Iranian sailors perished in the engagement. The U.S. had just eliminated Iran's most aggressive missile boat in less than a quarter hour, and the battle was far from over. Shortly after the Sassan was silenced, radar screens on the USS Joseph Strauss lit up with a new threat. The Iranian frigate Sahand, a British-built Vosper Mark V, was pushing out from Bandar Abbas at high speed. At 1,500 tons, she was one of Iran's most capable surface combatants. Her captain clearly intended to strike. Sahand locked onto the American surface group and fired 2 anti-ship missiles across the water. The missiles roared in, but the Strauss and her consorts threw up chaff and electronic decoys. Both weapons lost lock and plunged harmlessly into the sea. The American response was immediate and overwhelming. 2 A-6E intruder attack jets from the carrier Enterprise were already airborne and closing fast. The guided missile destroyer USS Lynd McCormick added her own firepower to the equation. The intruders rolled in first, releasing a pair of harpoon missiles. At least one slammed into Sahan's superstructure, tearing through steel and igniting a fuel fire. Moments later, the destroyer launched a surface-to-surface harpoon. It struck the frigate near the waterline, opening a fatal gash. As the Iranian crew fought to save their ship, the intruders came around for a second pass. This time they delivered laser-guided skipper bombs and rock-eye cluster munitions. The Sahan's decks were ripped apart, and her ammunition stores began cooking off. Secondary explosions walked from bow to stern. Within 20 minutes, the frigate was a flaming, abandoned hulk. She sank stern first just before midnight, taking a large portion of Iran's naval capability down with her. But the fight was not over. As fires still burned on the Sahand, her sister ship Sabalan slipped out of Bandar Abbas around 2 in the afternoon. Ignoring the fate of her sister, the Iranian frigate charged south into the Strait of Hormuz, making a direct run toward the U.S. surface group. Her crew broadcast threats over open radio channels, and her onboard SAM batteries went active. Radar operators aboard the cruiser USS Wainwright detected the incoming surface-to-air launch. Sabalan fired several missiles at A-6 intruders patrolling overhead. The lead aircraft, call sign Green Lizard from VA-95 off the USS Enterprise, immediately broke into an attack profile. Flying at low altitude to stay below the frigate's radar horizon, the intruder popped up steeply and designated the vessel with its laser target designator. The pilot, Lieutenant Commander James Engler, released a single GBU-12 Paveway 2. The 500-pound laser-guided bomb tracked the spot of reflected light on the Sabalan's stern. It punched into the ship just forward of the helicopter hangar, tearing a deep gash into her flank. The blast ignited ammunition stores and fuel lines deep inside the hull. A series of secondary explosions ripped through the engine spaces, killing roughly 36 sailors instantly. The frigate went dead in the water, thick black smoke boiling from her wound. U.S. commanders watched the crippled ship through drone video feeds. They had the authority to sink her outright, but the order from the Joint Chiefs was explicit: do not let this spiral into full-scale war. With the Sahand already at the bottom and the rest of Iran's surface force shattered, letting Sabalan survive as a floating wreck served a strategic purpose. The American airstrike halted. Tugs later towed the gutted frigate back to port, her naval value destroyed for the remainder of the conflict. But the surface action was far from over. As the main naval battle raged, a separate and chaotic threat emerged from the Iranian coastline. Small, agile Bagamar speedboats, operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, swarmed into the shipping lanes in waves, attacking neutral tankers and merchant vessels with rocket-propelled grenades and heavy machine guns. U.S. AH-1T Sea Cobra helicopter gunships launched from the USS Trenton and hunted them across the Gulf's surface. The Cobras struck and sank 2 Bagamars. A-6 intruders from the USS Enterprise destroyed a third with cluster munitions. In the chaos of a nighttime engagement, 1 Sea Cobra went down, not from enemy fire but mechanical failure, killing both crewmen, the only Americans to die that day. The last of the Iranian speedboats disappeared beneath the waves, their crews killed or captured. By late afternoon on April 18, 1988, the thunder of naval guns had ceased. The silence that fell over the Persian Gulf was one of profound shock. In just 10 hours, the United States Navy had executed a crushing demonstration of modern naval power. The tactical results were stark. Iran had lost 2 critical Sassan and Sirri oil platforms, used as military outposts. Its surface fleet was devastated. The frigate Sahand was sunk after a fierce fight. The frigate Sabalan was heavily damaged and crippled. The missile boat Joshan was destroyed, and 3 Bagamar attack boats were sent to the bottom. The United States suffered a single tragic loss, a Marine Corps helicopter crash that killed 2 crewmen in a non-combat accident. Strategically, the impact was a seismic shock to Tehran. In a single day, Iran lost roughly half of its operational naval surface force. The message from the U.S. was unambiguous and delivered with overwhelming force. The Iranian High Command, reeling from the scale of the defeat, now faced a grim new reality. Their ability to project force or threaten shipping in the Gulf had been catastrophically diminished. This military humiliation proved to be a decisive catalyst. Within months, accelerating a process already underway, Iran reluctantly accepted the terms of United Nations Security Council Resolution 598, formally ending the 8-year-long Iran-Iraq War. Operation Praying Mantis had not just won a battle, it had forcibly altered the strategic calculus of a nation, bringing a bloody conflict closer to its end. The price for this 10-hour assault was remarkably low. The U.S. Navy lost 1 AH-1T Sea Cobra helicopter. It crashed into the sea at night, killing 2 aircrew. There were no other American casualties. However, the operation had hard limits. It was a punitive raid, not a full naval campaign. Despite destroying 2 frigates, a gunboat, and several speedboats, Iran's mine-laying capability survived. In fact, Iranian mines had crippled the frigate USS Samuel B just days earlier, triggering the entire mission. Mine-laying vessels continued to operate even after the strike. The Islamic Republic lost roughly half its major surface combatants in a single day, but its remaining fast attack craft and covert mine assets still posed a threat in the narrow Gulf waters. Operation Praying Mantis smashed Iran's surface fleet in a few hours, but it did not solve the mine problem. It was a focused, devastating punishment, not a full strategic solution. The United States had demonstrated overwhelming force, but it also showed that even a superpower could only achieve limited objectives in the confined,